In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to patriotradiobooks.com. That's patriotradiobooks.com.
Welcome to the new JFK show number 171. What a week in JFK. It's just been overwhelming, the things that have gone on, from the conference to the mock trial sham in just every way. So we're going to start off with that subject right now. Dr. Fetzer's worked very hard on this blog, and I've read it a couple of times myself, and it's just amazing. So let's go, Dr. Fetzer.
All right, we can start scrolling down. JFK, Bethesda autopsy photographs, not JFK. Oswald framed. Warren report a sham. Thanks to the brilliant research of Larry Rivera, we now have proof that the JFK autopsy photographs are not of the body of JFK, that Lee Oswald was framed, and that the Warren report, 1964, was a sham. We can now also prove that the backyard photographs were fake by pasting Lee Oswald's face on someone else, as he claimed, and have identified the body double as Dallas police officer Roscoe White. Good. Here you see a couple of the autopsy photographs published by Robert Groden that we're going to show are not even of JFK. We have demonstrated that JFK autopsy photographs published by Robert Groden, who served as a special consultant to the HSCA during its reinvestigation of the assassination during 1977-78, and who falsely testified that the man in the doorway was not Lee Oswald, but a co-worker, Billy Lovelady, whom we have proven was standing beside Lee, were not of the body of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We have likewise substantiated that the man in the doorway of the Dexter School Depository, whose presence was caught in the famous photograph taken by Associated Press photographer James Ike Alchins, was Oswald. He not only has the same height, weight, build, shirt, and T-shirt as Lee was wearing when arrested, but his facial features are those of Lee Oswald as well. And here's where you can see that doorway area and the figures of interest, in particular the doorman, who's extending out in the circle, and the man with his hands raised beside him to protect his eyes from the sun. The government maintains that Billy Lovelady was the man in the doorway, even though Billy went to the FBI on 29 February 1964, wearing the shirt that he had worn that day and was photographed by them. It was a red and white vertically striped short-sleeved shirt, nothing like the long-sleeved, richly textured and somewhat worn shirt on doorman. Lovelady could not have been doorman. In his book, The Killing of a President, 1994, Robert Groden published what he has long since claimed to be a definitive photographic record of the Kennedy assassination. On pages 72 and 82, we find 2 photographs from the autopsy of JFK, for which Groden takes credit for himself having discovered. But it turns out, when compared with photographs of the president, the body is not even that of JFK. Notice here we have the left profile of the body tilted upward, and the left profile of JFK. We have an approximate right profile at the bottom left and a right profile of JFK, where the photos on the left were both taken from Groden's book, The Killing of a President. Now proceed to and center This finding has led credence to the conjecture of Robert Morningstar that J.D. Tippet, Dallas police officer whom Lee Oswald was accused of having killed, which was impossible since Lee was already at the Texas Theater when it was being committed, may have been shot to serve as a body double for JFK. But look here at the superposition, how obvious it is that this man in the morgue, who Groden describes as JFK, is obviously not John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Yeah, I want to comment on that, Jim, before you scroll down, Gary. The point of reference here was the ear, okay, and the chin. The most important thing about these overlays is the perspective. We've talked about that so many times. Okay, as long as the perspective is the same, the angle of reference, then we're able to do overlays. And this one here was perfect because, as you align the ear and the back of the head and the chin and everything, the other features just were completely disjointed. They're completely different. And like you mentioned about the Robert Morningstar, that theory came about many years ago. What? Yeah. At least 15 years, Jim. Am I right on that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people scoffed at that idea. Yeah,
we had Morningstar on for an entire show about that, and we weren't shy about disagreeing about that part. So
now we need to re-examine Robert's hypothesis.
That's right.
It's the same thing, which happens with what we're going to talk about later about the position of Ike Algens on Elm Street, which is
That's right.
a whole new dimension on the investigation, Jim.
Yeah, which certainly deserved further investigation. Now, here is what Morningstar claims to be his masterpiece with an integration of Tippet with JFK. Since Earl Rose, a noted medical examiner, conducted an autopsy of Tippet in Dallas that began at 3:15 p.m. Central Time on 22 November 1963, the use of his body at Bethesda appears to be problematical, where the more likely explanation is that the body of a major whom Dennis David had been instructed not to log in violation of standard procedure at the morgue, was instead used in creating these fake images. Now, here are some photographs that I've extracted from a Robert Morningstar production. Scroll down a little, Gary, and we'll see photographs of Tippet in the morgue. And you'll see already from these photographs of Tippet in the morgue, scroll a little further, Gary, that it really doesn't look that much like the man in the photographs that is supposed to be JFK. Go further, and you see from this comparison, stop there, it's pretty obvious that these people are not the same. And if you go just a little bit further, here's a nice image of Tippet. Larry, I want you to comment on what it would take for us to prove. Talk about this one, Larry.
Again, the base of the forensic overlay studies that we've done before is directly related to the perspective. Okay, once we're able to get perspective and we're able to align certain features, then we can work with these overlays. If we don't have the same perspective, then you have to eyeball it, and I don't think that's
sufficient. That's not sufficient. But I'm sure you would agree that just eyeballing it in a preliminary way.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
It's obvious this is not the same person.
No, by far. Yeah. Now, the body double, as you posited before, is something that's very important because if they're going to create X-rays and whatever, of a shot from behind, that's essential.
Well, they could use actual JFK X-rays, but use this other body as the double. And we'll have to explore why that happened. Larry, you were commenting about the importance of this research.
Well, the Loose Empire, publishers of Life magazine, reached just about every home in America in those days. Before cable, before news, the way it's propagated today, you had to wait for your weekly copy of Life magazine. And these magazines, especially at the time of the assassination, were gobbled up by everybody. Now, when they put Lee Oswald on the cover of Life magazine and showed this type of concoction, okay, which is a composition as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to look at that and how we have proven that, then, the first thing that comes to mind to the American public is that Lee Oswald was guilty. So
that's right. Of course, that was the whole idea, to combine motive and means where they knew he had opportunity.
In a sense, I thought they even this was overkill because you got the weapons, you got the left wing magazines. How obvious can that be?
Larry, they're calculating the average intelligence of an American at about that of an 8th grader or less, maybe even an 8.
Don't insult that 8th graders, Jim.
Maybe even an 8-year-old.
Yeah, talk about the good old days when it was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and Life magazine, and that's all you needed to do to propagandize the entire American public.
All controlled by the intelligence agencies.
Everyone.
That's right. That's right. Now, here's the famous photograph of Lee holding the Mannlicher Carcano with which he's alleged to have shot JFK, the revolver with which he's supposed to have shot Dallas police officer J.D. Tippet, and holding 2 communist newspapers, The Worker and The Militant, which was used to implicate him in the crime by combining motive and means with the already established opportunity to kill JFK by virtue of his employment at the book depository, which, of course, was not in doubt. Jim Mars and I analyze this photograph framing the Patsy, the case of Lee Harvey Oswald. Jim Mars and I analyze this photograph framing the Patsy, the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, 20 October 2015, and concluded that it had been staged as Lee had told Will Fritz. We inferred on the basis of the height, build, and chin, but also an abnormality of his right forearm, that the stand-in had been Roscoe White, a Dallas police officer with ties to the CIA. Larry has now confirmed that finding. Here you'll see Larry's overlays from this wonderful photograph where Roscoe White just happens to be standing in the same stance as in the backyard photographs. Not surprising, since he was the person who stood in for Lee Oswald, who had explained to Will Fritz that that was someone else's body where his face had been pasted in. Notice in particular the blocked chin is the chin of Roscoe White, not the chin of Lee Oswald, who had a more tapered chin with a cleft. There's actually an insert line between the chin and the lower lip. The fingers of the right hand are cut off. We have multiple proofs, but this, by Larry Rivera, cinches the deal by identifying exactly the body double who had stood in to manufacture these phony photographs to implicate Lee Oswald in the mind of the public. Yes, we'll do it one last time. So not only now do we have proof that Oswald was framed using the backyard photographs, but we have further proof to which we shall now proceed that he was in fact in the doorway during the shooting. The Warren Commission went out of its way to obfuscate the fact that Lee Oswald had been captured in a famous photograph by AP to photographer James Ike Alchins by manipulating testimony to make the case that the figure extending out from the doorway was instead co-worker Billy Lovelady. The image of that area has become the object of intense study. The image of the area that has become the object of intense study was advanced by Robert Groden, irony of ironies. Mm-hmm. There it is. And notice the doorman is missing his left shoulder because Black Diamond is both in front and behind him at the same time, a photographic impossibility if it were real. The man with his arms upraised to shadow his eyes from the sun is wearing a short-sleeved shirt, which has been massively obfuscated, where Larry has confirmed that doorman is Lee Oswald. Here is proof that Oswald was doorman. Yes, perfect. Larry, you're just so fortunate to be able to get images that were perfect in perspective to create the overlays.
It's all about perspective, as long as we can obtain the same perspective, the sky's the limit. That's all I have to say about that.
So not only has Larry confirmed that the features of doorman, not only the height, the weight, the build, the shirt, and the t-shirt are those of Oswald, but that the facial features are the same as those of Oswald, and that the doorman is not Billy Lovelady. Here you see the same superposition with the image of Billy Lovelady. The ears are wrong, the nose is wrong, the jaw is wrong. This leaves no doubt that the man in the doorway.
It's comical, Jim, because when Bob Jackson went to pose him, which is exactly what he did, he obviously told him, "Purse your lips. I want you to do this, do that."
Yeah, trying to make him look like doorman.
I know, and now so many years later, it's just, and if you can backtrack a little bit, because I just want to comment a little bit about that Roscoe White overlay.
You want to go backwards?
Yeah. Because, if you look at the neck, okay, you were talking about the chin. Okay, that's good. That's fine. But if you look at the neck, the trapezius muscle, the shoulders, how everything tapers off, this torso under the armpits. Jim, this is exactly in line. Perfect. There's just nothing, nothing misaligned here. Look at this.
Larry, I know. I was so fortunate you found exactly the right photograph.
Right, the perspective that we've been talking about it, and I have another one which is a close-up of this. I hope we have a chance to see it.
No, it's completely sensational. Scroll back down now, Gary. Right, so we not only established that Doorman was not Billy Lovelady, but in the next image that Doorman actually was the man with his hands raised, protecting his eyes, as you will see here. Yeah. Again, brilliant work, Larry. Just brilliant work. I mean,
of all the things, this is what nails it for me. Of all the evidence that we have, this is the one that does it.
Really.
And everyone else, even people that are really doubting Thomas's, when they see this one, they go, "Okay, that's it," because that mouth just falls right. You can see
it's redefined. It's redefined, what's going on in the doorway, and this is a valid scientific approach.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
That's what we do here, Larry.
And notice, Jim, that nobody has refuted this.
Well, nobody could refute it. I mean, it's irrefutable.
and say, okay, I've done the same procedure that you did, and I've had results,
Yeah, you're doing great. When identities are corrected and colorized, it would have looked like this. And I love this, Larry, where we see what the doorway would have looked like and how it would have been so conspicuous that Billy was standing there with his red and white vertically striped shirt, with his hands up to protect his eyes from the sun, where just as he said, he was surprised they'd be confused because he was 2 to 3 inches shorter and 15 to 20 pounds or more heavier. That Groden has become the champion of Lovelady as Doorman has many ironic aspects. Scroll just a little, Gary. Not the least of which is that before he became a consultant to the HSCA, he himself maintained that Lee was in the doorway at the time of the motorcade, which was the subject of a newspaper article about him. 2 conspiracies in JFK death, Sentinel Star, 20 April 1976, before he underwent a conversion. Let me read that. 2 conspiracies in JFK's death. This was from the Sentinel Star, Orlando, Florida, 20 April 1976. Was Lee Harvey Oswald standing quietly in a doorway of the Texas School Book Depository at the time official records say he was killing President John F. Kennedy with a rifle shot fired from a 6th floor window? The answer is yes, according to Robert J. Groden, the earnest young author with F. Peter Modell of the paperback JFK, The Case for Conspiracy. I mean, the ironies, Larry, are overwhelming.
Well, that's right. 1976 was a very important year for Robert Groden, and, he ended up working for the HSCA during the summer. He had just finished publishing that book, and apparently things weren't going that well. And he had to, get with the HSCA, and then go to Denver, Colorado to see Billy Lovelady with Kenneth Bruton. And the rest, well, we know we'll be publishing on that.
Can I add that Mr. Groden was at the 2017 conference pushing Z-Film was authentic and Billy Lovelady is Doorway Man.
His doorman. I know it's outrageous. And he was receiving an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award at the same time, Garrett.
Gary, don't be a troublemaker. Come on. Don't.
A mock trial of Lee Harvey Oswald was scheduled to be held on the campus of the University of Houston on 16 to 17 November 2017, during which Larry Rivera would have been the key expert to testify that Lee was in the doorway. He already had his tickets and forwarded his proofs when he was notified that he had been removed from the witness list. Here is our discussion of this absurdity, which we've already presented. So the trial ended with a hung jury with a vote of 6-5 for conviction, where one of the prospective jurors skipped the trial. But had Larry been allowed to testify, they would have acquitted him after perhaps 5 minutes of debate, because his research leaves no doubt about it. Instead of a mock trial, they made a mockery of the trial and sabotaged decisive proof that Lee Oswald was an innocent man.
Right. And
you're not going to show that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what I want to point out is that this video went out the day before the trial, and it's a very much of a unique situation because the evidence had already been presented not only last year in Dallas, but we've presented it many, many times here. And this was, we were calling it a sham before the trial had begun, and so people that were listening to the trial had already been alerted that this evidence here had been taken out of the trial.
I know, isn't it stunning?
So, for the first time, everybody knew the evidence before the trial, and were upset that they excluded it, and they knew what it was.
Of course, absolutely.
The biggest blunder in JFK, working the other side of the street, we'll say.
But I know you guys consider the doorway overlays and that technology and everything that was done. That's good, you know, but now with the backyard photos, you know, those overlays, especially with the Roscoe White, I think opens up a completely new dimension in JFK's study. Because now when you bring Roscoe White into the picture the way that we have defined here, and I have a lot of new information. For example, Roscoe and Tippet were front door neighbors, okay? They lived on the same street, okay? Roscoe was extremely proficient in photograph alteration, and he used to alter just the face of photographs and sent those to his family members, and some of his family members used to receive these photographs, and they wondered where he received that type of training. So yeah. Roscoe White, and if Ricky Dunn is listening to us, watching this video, Ricky, you were right all along. You were right all along, and we need to re-examine the whole Roscoe White situation, because
the expert marksman.
It redefines, like I said, it redefines this entire case, Jim, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Larry, explain what's going on here at the conference.
Well, this is Larry Schnapps after his presentation, where you obviously you went up and you were the first person in the question and answer session, and you confronted Mr. Schnapps with the situation that went down in Houston, particularly, you know, my exclusion from the trial and the evidence that I would have brought to the trial. So,
that's right. He was claiming he'd heard terrible rumors about you, Larry. Terrible rumors. He never specified the nature of those rumors. He just said there were terrible rumors, which was a great affront all by itself.
And he added also that since this was a very it was a limited trial, they could not go to redirect. Okay, and in redirect, and his exact words were that he could not, if there was no redirect, he could not rehabilitate me as a witness.
But the criticism would have been pure ad hominem. It would have had nothing to do with the evidence. The jurors would have seen it as such and disregarded it. I mean, it's just insulting that he offered this, Larry, because it was totally irrelevant.
Well, any competent defense lawyer, attorney would have objected right away. However, if it all depends, you know, and this is what I was told, you know, it all depended on the judge. If there would have been a 50-50 chance of him allowing it, and if so, then since with the absence of the redirect procedure, then I would have been left hanging to dry.
Larry,
so,
you wouldn't have been hanging anywhere because your evidence was conclusive. This was a sham.
Well, I'm just telling you what I was told. Obviously, these were the excuses and the situations that I was presented with, and you know, a lot of people wouldn't buy that, like you and other people at the I would say everybody at the conference. But that's just you know, bringing out what really happened.
All right, here's what happened at the conference when I confronted this guy over these stupid claims.
As Larry Rivera would have presented, it would have led to 5 minutes of deliberation and a conclusive acquittal of Lee Oswald for any involvement in the assassination, and shown in addition how he had been trained using the backyard photographs. He was excluded on the specious grounds of alleged anti-Semitism for having sat into a new JFK show where Don Fox was presenting evidence of the Mossad's involvement in the assassination of JFK by ownership of the Dow Tex and the uranium mining company, from which 3 shots were fired, the only unsilenced shots that were used in Healy Plaza that day. Some of the accounts you're giving here about the shooting are so absurd that you can't seriously be taking them to heart. But let me add that further confirmation this was a deliberate sabotage of this mock trial, turning it into a mockery, is that we had another candidate who could testify who hadn't been a part of the new JFK show, where, by the way, criticism of Israel for its involvement in the assassination of JFK or other atrocities such as slaughtering Palestinians is not anti-Semitism, it's standing for truth and justice.
I would just say that the other person...
Well, that was the excuse that they gave for dropping me as a witness. I had participated in show, I believe, number 85, which, as you know, was Don Fox's baby. I had nothing to do with that one. I was just an observer, so to speak, and it was guilt by association, like you were saying, and I think the more important aspect of this is that they would go through the trouble of looking at all of our videos. We've got how many videos? 160, 170, and they would go video after video by video to find some kind of dirt.
Well, Larry, this leads me to conjecture that Jim DiEugenio may have had something to do with this. Remember how DiEugenio launched a massive attack on me, which took me 7 hours to rebut and demonstrate that he didn't have a single argument against me of any validity. It was embarrassing. I'm telling you, this is a kind of nonsense and rubbish that he might have initiated, because notice Larry himself just talked about vicious rumors. It's clear he had never watched the videos himself. He'd never even bothered to confirm these vicious rumors. That sounds to me very much in the style of Jim DiEugenio.
Well, I was told that, they knew and they had seen the videos, and they accepted that I had made no disparaging remarks towards Jews, but that since my name was on the video, then, that was a problem. And hey, something, these mock trials, as far as I'm concerned, are mockeries of justice. I've told you that if something ever happens where Marina and Rachel and June ever bring a suit against the government to obtain the exoneration of Lee Oswald, then I would be more than happy to cooperate and provide all the technical information and overlays and images that I have and that I have attained. So I'm not really worried about that at all.
Well, you're not worried, but a unique opportunity was lost, because your evidence would have settled the matter decisively. Well, I'm not knocking that at all. Absolutely, I'm the one that spent all this money, to go to Houston. So, that just happens.
No, everyone has seen the evidence. It's all taking care of itself. The Black Op Radio and those people have fallen on their faces. They promoted this mock trial like it was the second coming.
And I want to add that I believe, yes, we had really good stuff because on the Man in the Doorway, but I think the breakthrough, the breakthrough that we had was the backyard photos. Because not only did we prove that we would have proven that it was Roscoe White, but we would have proven the anomalies when you do the facial overlays, how the right side is completely out of proportion and completely extends, from the right side of the head, which is an impossibility. When you have your interpupillary distance set and you have your features, your chin and everything, that just doesn't happen in this field. So I think that I believe last week when we presented the overlays with the grid and everything, and where we can actually draw empirical data, and I was counting, for example, the squares, and we won 5.5 squares for Lee and 6.5 for Backyard Men. So we're talking about more, 15%, maybe even more of difference in size there on the head, which indicates clearly that some kind of matte insert was performed there. Now, I also wanted to comment on something very important, because you know that ghost image, and I've really been pondering that, Jim. If you look at Backyard Man, the body, you know, is pretty good, you know, in the sense that in the photograph. Okay, had they inserted that somebody else in there, you would have had to do a lot of retouching, okay, along the whole body, and we don't see that. It's very uniform. Now, where you do notice retouching is in the area, only in the area of the face, like you were mentioning earlier, and that is where we need to focus on. And since Roscoe had the ability to do that, okay, then definitely I would have to put Roscoe, you know, at the top of the list, you know, on who was responsible for those
touch-ups, because he was an expert in the area.
That's right. And you know, like I said, we're opening up a whole new can of worms, you know, on Roscoe White, okay, based on this, okay, because once we can identify Roscoe White as the Backyard Man, then, you know, this takes on a whole new proportion, Jim.
Wonderful.
And I tell you what, his son tried to tell us this a very long time ago. But look, we'll come back and listen to Larry Schnapps' rebuttal as soon as we take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is New JFK Show, number 171.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to patriotradiobooks.com. That's patriotradiobooks.com.
All right, welcome back to the JFK Show, number 171. As promised, do y'all want to have any comments before we play Larry Schnapps' response?
No, you go ahead and play it. I mean, it was pretty feeble, pretty inadequate.
You know, anytime you have a witness, you have to have time to prep them and interview them. And we were presented with the witness. First, it was only available on Thursday, which there was no time. That was Bob Tannenbaum's day. And we had no time to vet this person and talk to him. So I agree with the first half of his statement about the statement of the characterization of what was said. And as far as, you know, the shots and stuff, you know, we were, I just told you about John Orsted. The first day was about essentially the grassy knoll. And we were not trying to, on the second day, which is Bill Simmons and I, we were not trying to identify who the other killer was or where the shot came from. We were just trying to show that Lee Oswald was not one or the gunman, and that the evidence that was used to link him to this assassination was planted and was unreliable, and other evidence involved. That was the purpose. And we think, you know, we only had half a day. We got 5 jurors to agree with us. And they had more time, or we had more time, and we think we would have gotten an acquittal.
Yeah. You heard that one person clap, and then everyone stopped clapping?
Yeah.
That was pretty embarrassing. All right, Larry, tell us about this.
Well, we went down to Dealey Plaza because Jim and I were doing some work for PBS, you know, some interviews, you know, and whatever, and I decided to try to, you know, do as we had talked about before about the position of Ike Alchins. All right, if you look at the Zapruder film, he's always on the infield. He's standing on the grass. All right, now if you go down to Dealey Plaza and do what I did, which the photo at the bottom is taken from the infield, okay? And if you look closely, you'll see that it's not the right angle. It's not right. It's not the right perspective as the Altgen 6 photograph. Look at the tree is way to the left. Okay, it's almost covering that the left side of the entrance area of the TSBD. Now the one on the one at the top, which I took, risking my life here because those people come down pretty fast there on Elm Street. It's a downslope. I stood there in the middle of the left lane of Elm Street, and I took this photograph, and lo and behold, everything is perfect and in perfect alignment with the Altgen 6 photograph. Now, what does that mean, Jim? It means that a lot of hypotheses here are being confirmed. Number one, the Robert Cutler who had put Altgens on the street, albeit not in the middle of the left lane of Elm Street. He put them a little bit more to the right. In that map where he's got all the photographers, and now we have a confirmation of the Newcomb tapes. Okay, because if Altgens was there in the middle of the left lane of Elm Street, and he's got these motorcycles bearing down on him, okay, he knew that he was comfortable enough to stand there and know that he wasn't going to get run over. Another thing, don't forget that he was at the corner of Main and Houston, and he had enough time to walk all across the infield where he snaps. First, he's at Main and Houston. He snaps 4 and 5, and then he runs I don't think he even had to run. Went all the way across the infield and ends up in this position, which means that motorcade was going so slow. And if you analyze even more, confirms the extensive alteration of the Zapruder film, because in the Zapruder film, the motorcade, the limo is coming down 11, 12 miles an hour, which is not what this other evidence brings about, Jim.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Larry. Absolutely right. It's fascinating. You're doing such brilliant work with Blender. Your overlays, all of this is sensational. And of course, during the conference, your own talk, which preceded Larry Schnapps, was about the use of Blender to model Dealey Plaza. And I think the audience was blown away, Larry, just to see the sophistication of your approach.
And now that you mentioned that, the reason I went and stood here and took this photograph is because in Blender, as we were able to position Ike Altgens, we put him right there. That was the only angle that would give us, the tree to the right of the entrance.
Larry.
And that type of angle. Well, I had to go and test it, and we're testing one hypothesis versus another, and everything seems to be falling right into place.
Yeah, absolutely sensational. Gary, did you want to add a comment?
Why wouldn't he be standing in the street? It's a 3-lane highway, and especially this picture to top. Of course, you're going to be in the highway if you're a photographer like that.
No, the point is that if the vehicles had been moving at the speed they ought to have been moving, then he would have been in risk of being hit by a motorcycle.
That's right.
The point is it demonstrates that the motorcade was going so slowly. In fact, Hargis even said he had to put his boots on the ground to keep his motorcycle from tipping over.
That's right.
That Altgens was, encouraged to step into the street with no fear or risk that he might be hit because the motorcade was proceeding at such a minute speed.
Now, and let's develop that a little further, Jim. Don't forget that James Chaney said that Bobby Hargis ran in between the two limos on his way to where? To the grassy knoll.
But Larry, that's after the limo had been brought to a halt. This hasn't happened yet. The limo is brought way down here before it's brought to a halt, and then Hargis runs between them. So that's correct, but the location is not where
I know. I realize that 100%. But what I'm getting at is that if this whole package here, this whole motorcade, the limos and everything, were coming down at him so slow, that he would stop completely, as we know he did now, is a given. Because, if the motorcade is going, that slow, then, what else is there to analyze?
Right. No, absolutely sensational. Gary, anything more you want to add?
No, it's just fantastic work is all I can say.
Gary, Larry, I suggested that Jim DiEugenio may have been behind this. I believe he's been following our work very carefully, but he's very careless and irresponsible in how he attacks it. For example, he published the two-parter on me and Sitka entitled The Decline and Fall of Jim Fetzer, Part 1, and you can scroll, Gary. And then The Decline and Fall of Jim Fetzer, Part 2, and the words THE have slipped over. And it took me 7 hours. It took me 7 hours to go through DiEugenio's attacks and to demonstrate that there was no substance to it whatsoever. And scroll down, Gary, where you see the issues I was dealing with here. How many shots, how many hits the Secret Service set up JFK, identifying the three tramps, pivotal role of Lyndon Johnson, murder in Dealey Plaza, misspelled, the gross medical anomalies, the use of the term fencering. I mean, it was a really shabby performance of DiEugenio. Then in the next episode, go ahead and keep scrolling down to the contents, right? The alteration of the Zapruder film, Grodin's autopsy photographs, the bullet hole in the windshield, Judith Baker's authenticity, the man in the doorway. He was attacking me on all of these issues, and there was no substance, no basis, no justification, no rationale. Then he attacked me more on the man in the doorway and on Peter Jennings' Mary's Mosaic. Continue, Gary. You're doing great. Yes. Then we had we're talking about Thompson, Grodin, DiEugenio, on Phil Nelson, LBJ ducking down, on Max fingerprints, on Gregory Douglas, on George H.W. Bush, on nanothermite in relation to 9/11. I mean, this was embarrassing. These are subjects where Jim DiEugenio doesn't know anything at all. He's a complete incompetent. He was attacking me related to Scholars for 9/11 Truth, my two appearances on Hannity and Combs, my first book on 9/11, the 9/11 conspiracy, my lectures and conferences, the faking of Flight 175. I mean, this is a guy who is completely unqualified to attack me on these subjects, and there he was. So you continue, and we find even more subjects. It was, to me, massively embarrassing, but DiEugenio appears to have no shame. He even attacked me further about 9/11, creating the cutouts on the tower facades, how we know that nobody died at Sandy Hook, and more, Gary, including the Boston bombing charade, the death and replacement of Paul McCartney, the official narrative of the Holocaust. My research has been collaborative. 6 JFK shooters identified, my books and shows. Gary, I just want the public to know that I have thoroughly dismantled the criticism that Jim DiEugenio directed, and it seems to me very much in accordance with his character and style, that he should have attempted to sabotage Larry's appearance before the mock trial. That seems to me to be perfectly consistent with what we know about Jim DiEugenio.
Well, somebody put those people up to episode 85, Jim. You know, I don't know who, and I'm not going to speculate, but somebody did, and you know.
Well, I can promise you one thing: there's a lot of angry people that happened. See, you have to think about it. The people that go to these conferences were there last year, and so you showed this evidence to them last year, so they already knew what it was. And then when this was excluded, it really showed their cards. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't the Lancer conference basically fold up tent and move on?
Yes. There were a tiny number of people there, I think maybe 60, and they decided to fold early. I predict there will not be another Lancer conference.
They're just tired of this lightweight stuff. And here's Larry being excluded. Here's the main thing. I have some screen shares here. Where
I think I need to comment on that. I just think that Judy's conference, you know, at this point in time is
we'll get it later.
Attracting, you know, the best speakers, and Judith is
go to full screen with us. Stop the screen share. Yeah.
I just want to say that Judith works. You know, she puts the conference on, you know, for that weekend, but you know, you have to understand that she works year round on this. You know, it's not just the 3 days of the conference, okay? And people need to realize that, you know, and she needs to be applauded for that, because she is attracting, her conference is attracting the very best, the very best researchers. And I'm not talking about, you know, myself. I'm talking about people like Ed Tatro. You know, she had Jim Mars until obviously Jim Mars passed away in August, okay? And so many different people that want to attend her conference.
Yeah. And you see, Russ Baker's just not enough. You see, when you have a guy that opens his conference speech or talk with the statement that I'm really not, as deep into JFK as probably happened here.
Yeah, this year we had Dick Russell. Again, Phil Nelson. We had the guy that does the Rambler. What's his name? I forget. Just on and on and on. It's like a who's who of authors and researchers that have been doing this for a long time. So I think that is something to build on. And obviously, Judith has, is right now at the top, as far as the JFK conference is concerned.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people. I'm sorry. I'm sure a lot of people.
Go ahead, Gary.
I'm sure that a lot of people went up to Schnapps and let him know just how they felt. Because if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't at the banquet that night.
That's right. There was an empty chair with his name on it.
So
I decided not to attend the speaker's banquet.
Here. I've got. Let me just read here some of this.
Go through the program. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Phil Singer, Marianne Moore, Mormon, Paul Kunstler.
That's Mary Mormon. Just in case anyone has any doubt, that's Mary Mormon.
Yeah. David Denton. David is. Oh man, he's a professor. He's been doing this for a long time, and we sat with him that morning, and we had breakfast. And he's an incredible person here. Zach Shelton, Ed Tatro, Phil Nelson, John Wells. As an MC, you can't ask for more. Andrew Craig, the attorney for Kappa, Larry Schnapps, Brandon Benson, Dr. Fetzer, Gordon Ferry. Judy Baker, Dick Russell. Robert Tannenbaum never goes to conferences. He's been semi-retired. Cyril Wecht, Robert Groden. You want me to continue? And so,
I think we get
Grover Proctor. I was talking about Grover Proctor. He's the guy that did all the Rambler stuff. Richard Sharnon, which Jim brought him on. That was I think a fantastic interview and show. That Richard Sharnon,
that was going to go up as a video real soon. I
really, Jeffrey Holmes, Victoria Hawes, Ed Haslam over the Skype, St. John Hunt. St. John always.
Yeah. Beverly Oliver.
Yeah, Beverly was there. So this is like really really good. Here's the program. Okay.
Hey, is it okay to take a peek at the other conference real quick?
Sure.
All right.
Now do it.
All right. We've got.
Oh, you're going to compare? You're going to. Oh, come on. Be nice. Come on. Be nice.
Should we be nice? All right. So, see, these people. This is the reason why you have to go home early. You've got to do better than this. I'm not saying all these people aren't, but. It's just
Andrew was over there also. No, he doesn't say anything.
I'm not saying all. She had to be the highlight for both. Yeah, Bill. Hey, Jeff Morley, there's your buddy there, Dr. Fetzer.
I'm going to reserve comment on these people. Yes.
All right. Let's just take a look, and it's not Bill Newman.
John Newman.
Yeah.
Of course, Oswald in the CIA. Which he's done, he's ex-CIA, so.
Gary Shaw, I respect him.
Oh, yeah.
What do we
Bill
have?
Simplitz, who, by the way, had a role here, no doubt, in taking Larry out.
I don't think he attended that conference. I don't think so. Maybe, but I don't know.
Says he's going to comment on the mock trial in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I would have to say not quite the roster.
My only critique, Larry, since you were on the program, would be that you have 1 hour slots. There were too many sessions that didn't allow 1 hour where there was time for questions. So I think in the future you have to be more traditional in blocking out the time slots. And, that there were too many speakers for the amount of time available.
It happened last year and it happened against this year. What can you say? Yeah, I know. The time allocated never is enough, especially for certain speakers. We just have to work on that.
Okay, Gary, you want to take us out, my friend?
Yeah, like I said, what a week in JFK. So we're going to go ahead and close the book on this one. This is New JFK Show number 171. Appreciate you, Larry. Jim, we'll see you next week.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
That's what we were told. Most Americans never believed Lee Oswald was the lone gunman, for excellent reasons. In fact, there were at least 6 shooters who fired from 8 to 10 shots or more who are identified here. We have, finally, the solution to the greatest murder mystery in history, laid out for the world to see, proof after proof after proof. Photos were faked, the body was changed, x-rays were altered, the home movies were fixed. 15 experts contribute to a 529-page book with 1,037 photos and diagrams in black and white and color.
Hi, this is Gary King. If you'd like JFK, who, how, and why, and would like to support the new JFK show, then go to PatriotRadioBooks.com. That's PatriotRadioBooks.com.